Hey, coffee experts. Those of you running independent coffee shops, you're always looking for ways that you can drop your costs. And we here at the Coffee Experts Club really understand that. And so we've started something called Indie Coffee Coalition. And what it's designed to do is to drop your costs on two of the things that you're probably experiencing the highest sales volume in your store. And that is energy drink and frat mix. Those two line items, we've created our own products and are offering you those products at a reduced cost so that you can cut out the Red Bull of America. You can cut out the main lines of energy drinks that you're doing and serve your own energy drink at a reduced cost on a line item that you're probably already making a lot of sales on anyway. The best way that you can grow sales is by dropping your costs and maintaining a current volume. So check us out at indiecoffee.co and we'll love to tell you more there.
Welcome to the Coffee Experts Club, where we discuss all of the insights, expertise, and drama that goes into making your passion your profession. Our hosts, Aaron, Ben, and Drew, are three coffee experts who have taken their coffee experience and turned it into true expertise. They have consulted with major coffee brands throughout the United States and beyond, providing operations expertise and growth strategy for drive-through openings, multiple locations, and everything in between. So brew yourself a cup and hang out a bit with the Coffee Experts Club.
Coffee Experts Club. Hey, great to see you guys. How's the day?
Hey.
Drew, Ben?
Good. What up?
What up? Drew, are you in San Ignacio or San Pedro?
San Ignacio right now.
I love it.
Ignacio. I still haven't been there.
Oh, dude, so cool. It feels like a page straight out of the Jungle Book to me. Like it's just this little town tucked into this village community or this jungle community. I really dig it.
I'm gonna have to check it out. Next time I go down, see the third
Next
location.
time. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh man, I thought that was so great, Ben. When I reached out the other day and I'm like, hey Ben, we've got a grand opening event that we're trying to get lined up. You want to be on the front line? And you're like, not today. I don't want to do all the stress of a grand opening and pulling shots and that kind of crazy all over again.
I remember the days like what goes in as a barista at the grand opening and how quick your brain needs to work. Mine don't work that quick anymore. And
Tell
it
you
can't
what.
work that quick for that long.
Tell you what, Drew comes out of every grand opening looking like a 60-year-old man. The dude limps so bad. I'm like, we've got to fix this. He goes, dude, I always am like this after a grand opening. I'm like, this isn't normal. You shouldn't limp that bad. Like you don't ever limp except for after grand openings.
I'm just saying
Oh,
there's a reason why like halfway through our grand openings back at Roasters, I was like, I'll just go do the parking lot. I'll direct
Yep.
traffic for you guys. 'Cause even back then I knew I was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot keep up.
Anymore, I'm getting there.
Drew and I were talking about it. Drew and I were talking about the good old Ben days. I think it was Walla Walla was the first time I saw you pull that card where you're like, you know what? I think I'm going to head out to the parking lot and just kind of handle the parking lot. But in all fairness, that parking lot was a total shit show. And anybody who
It
knows grand
was.
openings know that's where things go sideways the fastest is out there in the parking lot.
Yep. Yeah. It was time to pass on the torch to a younger generation.
Welcome, Drew. And now Drew's getting at Ben's age where Drew's like, it's time to pass the torch to a younger generation.
Yep.
I love it. Well, hey, coffee experts, thanks for tuning in this week. I was just down in Belize with Drew last week. And, for those of you who don't know, Drew and I own a coffee business down in Belize, first drive-through coffee in the country, which has been pretty badass to be able to step into a totally new environment and bring something we know so well in the Pacific Northwest, having opened dozens and dozens of coffee stands and just knowing how the magic works and be able to bring it someplace. It was a big, brave step for me and Drew to take it into this country where coffee and drive-throughs, like this is a new concept. Drive-throughs at large. We're the first drive-through on the island of San Pedro on Ambergris Key. And so there are a lot of people that came to Drew and I are like, this isn't going to work. That Belize people aren't going to like it. It's all golf carts, some really crazy things, but I'm happy to say it's been killing it for us. And we're open location number 3. It looks like in June, fingers crossed, groundbreaking started while I was in town. But we thought it would be a good time for us maybe to have a conversation about partnerships. Drew and I are 50-50 partners. We both are in this thing equal amounts and we both have a different role. And I think it's good for you to be thinking about what kind of business do you want to do? And do you want to do it alone? Because it can be a very lonely business. It can be a very stressful business. It can be really difficult for you to have all of the skill sets to be able to do the entire business when you're just a solopreneur. And so I love being in partnership with Drew. We're going on 3 years together. We've known each other for a lot longer than that, probably about a decade now. Drew and I have been, in friendship, but I think it'd be a really great topic today to talk about partnership, how you're doing business, what you look for, the pitfalls to stay out of, and then just how you're making a decision with your business. So, Ben, I think I might kick it over to you and let you frame it up a little bit, but just on some of the questions that might come to top of mind. And then it will probably lead to conversation between Drew and I of, what we see in each other, what we see that are potential, shortcomings or things that we need to be careful of what we step into. And I think that it's going to be a benefit to people listening today.
Yeah, my first question off the top of my mind is typically, especially in the coffee industry, you see that business partner is your spouse. I mean, I'd say 9 times out of 10, that's what we see, right? The husband and wife start the company. I don't know actually of any other coffee companies that we're clients of where it's not a husband-wife duo business partners. What would you say is the benefit? I mean, I can think of some very obvious ones to going with a partner outside of your spouse on a venture like this.
Yeah. Drew, do you want to start? You want me to start?
Well, I think, when you're picking a spouse, you can call it picking a spouse. I'm not sure if exactly that's how it always works. You look for very different qualities and you pick for a business partner, and some might say, marriage is like a business, it's similar type of engagement. I wouldn't necessarily know other than from my parents and my friends exactly how that works. But I'm not really thinking about, what are my skill sets that I can practice in the business world and who is going to complement me in that fashion when I'm picking a partner in a relationship. Those are going to be different things, different questions that I ask myself, different decisions are going to have to be made. Now, if, Aaron is married and I'm not, right? So some of his decisions are definitely going to happen with his spouse. And then we're going to have to bring those things together and kind of find the best way to synchronize our desires and things that we want to put into the business. Now with Aaron and I mean, we have vastly different skill sets and a lot of, overlap, but a lot of things that don't overlap. And I mean, we've talked time and time again about, outsource the things that you're not good at,
Yeah.
and if you are starting a business and you're starting it from scratch, you don't know who's going to come in the door that you can hire. You don't know who's going to come into your proximity that's going to have those skills that you don't. Aaron and I think we're pretty fortunate to have a long-standing relationship before this and kind of identify those things that where we're cohesive and where there are places that we don't overlap. We can use for the benefit of whatever business we ended up putting our minds towards.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, great thoughts there, Drew. Especially from your side of not yet being married. You know what I mean? But like from your perspective, from my side, being married, the Collab team, I would say not even coffee, but a lot of the businesses we help, a lot of them, the spouses are both involved. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
the spouses are both involved as the leading entrepreneurs, visionaries, whole 9 yards. I would say some of the hardships in that, right? There are pros and cons, right? The pro would be you intimately trust this person, you know them very well, right? The con would be now there's no break in either of your lives of something different. You know what I mean? And if you're not careful, all conversations can be about business. Every time you sit down for a meal, every time you go on a walk, every time you take a date, like you both know very intimately the problems in the business and that's all you talk about. And I think that I've seen a lot of strife and stress come out of that scenario, because
Sure.
usually that means you split duties and then because you know each other so well, sometimes you can get a little nitpicky, you know what I mean? And then sometimes it's like you're bringing your marital stuff into your business stuff, and then that can have an implication for people in your business. I think all three of us have seen that very close and upfront, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Within coffee of that at our origin, but also in a lot of different client accounts, you know what I mean? Where it's like sometimes the division between marriage and business is really touchy. And then, so what happens when the business starts to fail? What's that going to mean for your marriage? I mean, that there's some things where it, like can put really a lot of pressure on, it, especially if you're both looking for a paycheck from the same place. Like I think
Mhm.
there are a lot of pains in that. So for me, Megan, I am married. Megan and I are celebrating 30 years coming up this upcoming year. So I think that long time in marriage, and I feel like just like I feel about Drew, this is going to sound super awful. Just like I feel about Drew, I feel about Megan in some ways when it's like, no, we both have our skill set. Like we both have the things that we're good at. And, it's going to work best if we kind of stay in our lane. Megan doesn't want to be involved in all the intimate details of the business. Megan doesn't sit in our weekly level 10 meetings. Megan isn't making all the decisions with the marketing things that Drew and I decide on marketing, but there are parts of the business Megan does like. And in those things, like we'll bring Megan in and we'll get her opinion on aesthetics. We'll get her opinion on how we're handling the donation element of Coffee de los Mayas, because there's a big donation piece for us from an ethos perspective. So I think there's strategic places that Megan can enter and exit, and then it leaves Drew and I to really work through the really, nitty gritty of the business. And I personally prefer that.
Would you guys recommend, or would you recommend, Aaron, from that side of it, if I'm looking to start a coffee shop, tomorrow, I want to get into the industry, should I look for a partner first, or, before saying, hey, wife, it's you and me, we're the dynamic duo of this business now, instead of just going, hey, I want to start a business, you're my business partner, wife, should I, maybe go look for a partner first, contact some people who I'm familiar with and see if they're interested?
I would say this is the benefit of a partner, right? Is that it's not only your capital or your resources or your skill set you're putting into the pot, right? Like Drew and I are very different when it comes to skill set, just like you said. And I feel like that's brought a lot of stability, like, because then it's not just a set of skills that I have that I know. And we're working with clients now that are in it as a solopreneur, and we identify a lot of big gaps because you can't be good at everything. You know what I mean? That's why that's a great spot for us to fit, right? Of coffee experts coming in with Collab team of how we complement other people's businesses and help pick up the slack. But I'd say the thing I like about a partner is more resources. They're bringing some money to the table. Like Drew brought to the table, he had several machines that he was putting aside to start his own thing. Coupling up with Drew, we were able to absorb those machines in. I had some cash resources that I've been collecting with Collab team that I was looking to deploy. I think we combined together and we were able to complement that. I would say be very careful who you choose, though, because I think that I would say you really want to know that person and really want to know them in a business context, because there are plenty of great hearted people out there that are not good businessmen or women. You know what I mean? And I think that I've known Drew for a long time. The thing where Drew and I complemented each other is I knew Drew from the Roasters days. I had seen him all the way up running stores, running multiple stores, get to the point of regionally managing 7 stores. You know what I'm saying? And then I knew he had the chops and the desire to be entrepreneurial, because even at that point, there are people we still know that are still in Roasters, not Roasters now, but the new iteration of it, who are still doing what Drew was doing and was doing that when he was there. But I don't know that they're as entrepreneurial as Drew. So I think, and that's great. I don't think there's a right or wrong in that, but find somebody that's got some entrepreneurial desire to go and do something. And then I would say that the final thing of it is like have an understanding of what are your expectations. Neither Drew or I are taking any money out of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, the business is just making money and multiplying, which I feel like is the smartest way to do it. If you're a couple, a lot of times I see people wanting to go, they're essentially buying themselves a job.
Mm-hmm.
The danger is like you're starting now this new company with a whole lot of expectation that it better work. It has to work because all your eggs are in one basket. I feel like it's freed Drew and I up a lot to not have that same kind of pain.
Yeah, it seems like too, by doing that, you're able to split the time responsibility too. If I'm a married couple and looking to this new business for a paycheck, like all of our time has to be there, or we don't eat. But if you have 2 partners who have outside jobs, you can kind of effectively split the time, still keep your actual paycheck coming in from somewhere else while keeping the business running on its own without, having to take a drop from the business like you're talking about.
I think to add to that, and maybe Drew can add to this too, what's really benefited us is station of life, right? Drew's a much younger dude than I am. I mean, Drew was such a punk when I was down in Belize, telling like the kids I'm his dad. Like he's like, this is my mom and my dad. Megan and I are down there, just like such a punk, like the things that he's doing. Just because Drew likes to just needle things like that and just see what the kind of response is going to get out of folks. But truly, like there's a big station of life difference between Drew and I. You know what I mean? I've been established. I've had Collab team, for over a decade. Like it's been a great money-making business for me. And it's enabled me to really stash away a lot of cash to be able to deploy. Drew's much younger than I am. He doesn't have that kind of cash to deploy, but what Drew really has is time and energy. You know what I mean? He's not married. He's a single dude. He's pretty mobile. Like he's not anchored down to one place. Me, I have a mortgage. Like I have kids here. You know what I mean? Like I've got, parents that are at a later stage of life than Drew's folks are at. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I feel much more like bound here. Drew went sight unseen to go start this business with me in Belize. Like he's never even been to the freaking country, and the guy's willing to like just go check it out and go do it. And I love that about Drew. That makes us very different, but I feel like it also really complements because Drew's able to be there in Belize a lot more than I'm in Belize, And I think that that's really helped because then it also begins to identify what are the roles and responsibilities and how does that work too.
I mean, it brings a different perspective too. Like we both have our skill sets. We both have our inconsistencies or our blind spots. in the same collaborative manner, we're able to stay balanced and move. We have a goal, and we set out with a goal initially, a growth plan, strategically how we wanted to develop the business. Initially, little things that we wanted to start along the way that could help save costs and give us the ability to give back to the communities. And then that, in that is, the way that we did this Belize venture was unique in that I moved to a whole another country. A lot of people aren't going to be doing that. You're going to start it in your hometown or move to a neighbor city or somewhere you're familiar with and start something. So the traveling aspect might not be necessarily the same for whoever's listening to this, but the time you're still going to have to spend the same amount of time doing these things as I have and Aaron has, combined, we spend a lot of time on this business. And if you're the one person doing that, you might not be traveling around, staying in different places all the time, but you will be working from your garage, working from your home, working from the bathroom, working from, the back room. And, that's allowed, I think Aaron and I've given up on time at times, been like, Aaron, I can't figure this thing out. I got to go home right now. And, I'm giving the stress over to you and I'm going to go take a nap. And, that has allowed for a lot of positive direction in those hard moments where it would be harder. I think it was just me and a partner, or my significant other, pass on that stress to the person that I loved, standing next to me. Not that I don't love you, Aaron.
What do you guys think of, or I guess even would you recommend something like a silent partnership or even like an angel investor, somebody who's coming and just says, hey, I don't want any operational duties in the business. I've just got a boatload of cash. I'm ready to inject somewhere. I'll be a silent partner, take my cash. I just want, my dividends out the backside.
I think that could be really nice in some ways, right? Because it gives you operational freedom. But there can be dangers to that too, because obviously whoever's investing is they're going to have expectations, they're going to have standards, and maybe they don't know those standards and expectations out the gate, especially if they don't know coffee very well. They're coming into it knowing how to read profit and loss statements, how to understand budgets and reports, and how to run a business, but not really coffee specific, just like any other business is a very specific thing. So, the deeper you get into it, it's not terribly complex. It's not like running a financial institution or anything like that. So it's easy to learn as you go. The angel investor is going to have all of a sudden, maybe they're going to have preferences, they're going to have ideas, and maybe they decided not to have too much necessarily input in the business. They are going to want to meet certain, financial goals, or maybe like hiring and the tenure of employee expectations and things like that. So I think some of the benefits would definitely be your operational freedom, but then the drawbacks would be if they don't know what their expectations are and then suddenly they implement them, that can kind of throw you off balance, down the line a little ways.
I think for me, looking into it, and then Ben, I'm gonna take it and twist it, and then you can ask questions based upon where I take it next. For me, I think that it's a slippery slope when you start bringing investors in, because I think it helps you really begin to grow fast, right? And that's what Drew's saying is like the benefit is we could have 3 locations open if we were able to staff them. If like we all know the pains, right? Like, but if we could do it that fast, like we could be mushrooming overnight. Downside is I would say number one, usually the kind of angel investor you get, those kind of people have money, but maybe they haven't done this a bunch of times before. So then their expectations, like Drew said, can get a little wonky. Most investors that I know want to see a return within a pretty short window of time. They're not going to just let you, like with Drew and I, we're putting all this into it. We're not expecting any return for the first few years. Like we've said 3 years or 3 locations before we start taking any kind of member draw. And even then, he and I are really particular on how much money we're going to pull out of business because we want to continue to grow. And if you cut out a dividend for somebody too early, that really is going to start to slow down your ability to continue to grow and take away some of like the bread and butter off your table that you really want to enjoy. So I think that there are pros and cons to investors. I would say if you're going to get an investor, make sure they really know what it's about investing, because there are a lot of people who come into money that want to invest with you that a lot of times get their hands way too deep in it, or it just becomes muddy or murky, or their expectations aren't your expectations, and then causes this friction. And then their money is locked up in your business, and that it caused a lot of people to shut down, you know what I mean? Because the money starts falling out, and then it's just going to be a pain point. I would say this, like to take a little twist on like what I would say has been Drew and I's biggest success. And I would highly recommend, and then Ben, you can poke holes in it if you want, is I would say mutual respect. Number one, like Drew and I have just a deep love and mutual respect for each other on a friendship level. Yeah, I mean, and we've had conversation about, hey, I just want to be clear, making money and doing business is cool, but it's not as important as us. So we're never going to allow money to get in between, like, well, we share. So let's make sure we establish that out of the gates. That's super, super important to me. I think it's easier for us to say that when we're not dependent on the money, right? So I
Mhm.
would say be careful of the pressures you put on yourself by the presence. But I think that mutual respect, I think also understanding each other's lanes and staying out of each other's lanes. You know what I mean? Like we've gotten really clear on Drew's main lane is our employees and the workflows and some of the decisions on the ground based on customer interactions. I stay out of that. Like Drew and I can have conversations about that. He bounced stuff off of me. Sometimes Drew will tag me in and we play like good dad, bad dad, or like nice dad, mean dad, you know what I mean? Where Drew can come down hard and then like he'll lean into me and let me come in easy. Or if there's like a rift in relationship that like people have gotten offended, it's really nice that Drew and I can kind of swing around and help each other in that and like have a second person where it's not just like, oh, you've gotten a disagreement with me. Oh, you're out of here then. Like, because we've all been in environments like that, right? When you don't get along with somebody and they just cut you loose, that doesn't feel good. So how can we have conversations about best ROI from an employee? Like if we put all this money and time into them, how can we save that as best as we can and only cut it if we have to? So I think like that deep love and mutual respect, and then also complemented by stay in your lane. Drew takes the on
Mhm.
the day-to-day customer experience and workflows with the employees. I take the bigger end of business of like bigger picture of the finance end of things and watching the P&Ls and coming back with opinions on how we're spending and looking at new locations and some of the more like Drew would say diplomatic relationships that we need where I'm just older. It's going to be received different if I roll in than if Drew rolls in, and I think just having that break of each one of us being able to play into each other, I feel like has been really advantageous.
You think looking for a partner, if somebody's looking to say, okay, I should probably get a partner, it sounds like really, finding that person who, if you're looking to start a coffee company, it's probably because you've been in coffee. Right? You were probably a barista, you were probably a store manager, whatever. So it sounds like really that if that's you, what you want to be looking for in a partner is somebody who hasn't been in coffee, somebody who's maybe been in banking, somebody who's maybe been in construction, somebody who knows, aspects of the business world, but is going to, just by the nature of not being in the coffee industry, is going to bring those sort of outside talents, kind of like you, Aaron. You weren't ever really in the coffee industry. You're in
Yeah.
project management and operations. So it sounds really advantageous as it seems like, hey, I want to start a coffee company. I know a buddy who's running, managing another coffee shop. Maybe me and him should partner up, but really you're not complementing your skills. You're just kind of duplicating yourself versus going and finding somebody who, if you found somebody who was in the construction world and partnered up with you, I mean, they would probably be the king of new location building and would be super helpful that way. That it really sounds like the best way to go about it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think for me personally, I mean, I've been on the coffee, on the front lines for a long time, and I've met a lot of people with the same, mindset as me when it comes to doing business and doing coffee specifically. From doing coffee and then doing, drink works, we've talked to hundreds of coffee shop owners. And one thing that I've learned is we're all pretty stubborn. We're all pretty, uh, rebellious and one track minded. And that's not necessarily insulted and probably part of why people are successful. But it's hard to find. When Aaron and I started this, we had a vision. We have a mission statement that's pretty clear about what we're wanting to do and how we're wanting to operate. And I think one of the hardest things about lining yourself up with somebody in the coffee world is it's really hard to line those visions up. And compromising on that vision can cause problems later on. And we don't want to compromise on our vision. We want to stay true. Want to stay true to that. And I mean, I remember getting an email about McDonald's from West talking about, hey, this was their original mission. Read it, and we all read it. And the reason that they're so successful is because they stuck to that mission. They stuck by what they originally said. And again, I mean, Aaron had his own role to play at Roasters and wasn't necessarily frontlines coffee, but it was, business growth and sustainability, tactical sustainability and things like that. And when it comes to executing the vision, it's best, I think, to not come from necessarily the front lines of coffee. It does shape you in a way when you're dealing with customers every day. How, what do I really want to do this business for? And I think that's one of the most important questions to ask each other before you choose a partner.
Yeah. Good stuff, boys. Good
Great
stuff.
idea.
So I hope you guys all enjoyed Coffee Experts today. Coffee Experts, I hope that as you're making your decisions on business, anybody that's looking to start coffee, like this is where we recommend you come, is just come and get free intel, free wisdom. And I just know this is that business wasn't meant to be something horribly burdensome. So ask yourself, what is it that's making it feel like that? Is there something I can remove? And I do think finding a good partner, I know there are plenty of people that have horror stories. I've been stoked at what I've had here with Drew, and honestly, just the collaborative energy within what we do in the day to day. I love working with Ben. Like, and Ben is his own dude and has his own LLC, and he couples in here with me with Collab team. And I feel like that partnership is really a special thing too. So I think find good collaborative environments and complement each other's abilities. And then I would just say, be generous with your words, man. Be kind. Put yourself in each other's shoes. How does this feel to them? Where are they coming from? Instead of just getting stuck in where you're coming from. Because if you always just hard press people based on where you're coming from, you're going to run over people, and that doesn't feel good after a amount of time. So I would just say lean into it, people's skill set and their abilities. But Drew, Ben, tons of respect for you two guys, and really appreciate you guys here on Coffee Experts.
Yes, sir.
We'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for joining us today. For those of you who are looking to become a coffee expert yourself, we offer an incredible, thorough training online for opening your first coffee drive-thru at www.myfirstdrivethru.coffee.